Vampires on the Neuse. Craven Blood, Beyond the Usual Vampire Tale by author Michaelson Williams. All rights reserved. Michaelson Williams, copyright 2024. Enjoy the experience. Section 1, Chapter 1, New Bern, North Carolina, boasts a rich and storied history that began in 1710 when Swiss and Palatine immigrants, led by Christoph von Grafenried, settled in the area. These settlers, seeking a new life in the New World, named their settlement after Bern, the capital of Switzerland, reflecting their deep connection to their homeland. The town quickly became a bustling hub of activity, with its strategic location along the riverbanks, fostering trade and growth. The European settlers brought with them their customs, architecture, and ways of life, which began to shape the emerging town's character. Long before the Europeans arrived, however, the Tuscarora Indians thrived along these same riverbanks in a village they called Chattoka. The Tuscarora had a deep, spiritual connection to the land, with traditions and histories passed down through generations. When Christoph von Grafenried and his settlers arrived, the Tuscarora were both intrigued and wary. Grafenried's unusually pale skin and piercing eyes led many Tuscarora to believe he was a supernatural being or a godlike figure. This belief stemmed from their spiritual traditions and the mystique surrounding the newcomers. The intersection of these diverse cultures marked the beginning of a complex and often tumultuous history for New Bern, as the town evolved through the blending and clashing of Native American and European influences. During the colonial era, New Bern quickly rose to prominence and became the original capital of North Carolina, playing a pivotal role in the American Revolution. In 1774, it was the site of the first provincial Congress in the colonies, a bold and defiant move against British authority. This historic meeting, which signaled the burgeoning desire for independence among the colonists, took place at Tryon Palace. Built in 1767, Tryon Palace was a grand government mansion, reflecting the wealth and ambitions of the colony. As the capital, New Bern became a hub of revolutionary activity, where ideas of freedom and governance were fervently debated and developed. Tragically, the original Tryon Palace was lost to a fire in 1798, which, according to local lore, was started by a rival faction of vampires. This mysterious and catastrophic event left a significant void in New Bern's historic landscape. However, the spirit of the palace was not extinguished. A meticulously crafted replica of Tryon Palace now stands in its place, serving as a symbol of resilience and historical preservation. This replica houses the renowned North Carolina History Center, offering visitors a glimpse into the rich tapestry of the state's past. Through interactive exhibits and detailed reenactments, the History Center brings to life the pivotal moments of New Bern's and North Carolina's storied history, ensuring that the legacy of the original capital continues to inspire and educate future generations. Section 2, Chapter 1, Introduction to the main character, Christopher Thornton. Christopher Thornton, a seasoned but recently retired security contractor from the big city, arrived in New Bern seeking peace and tranquility. After years of navigating the ever-increasing societal controls and demands of urban life, he was ready for a simpler, quieter existence. However, the recent assassination attempt on former President Donald J. Trump weighed heavily on his mind, knowing he might be called back into service. The thought of returning to his old life didn't sit well with him. He felt he had aged out of that type of work and longed for a change. Despite this, he couldn't shake the feeling that darkness was spreading and evil was winning while good stood by idly. As Christopher settled into New Bern, he often found himself reflecting on the town's history and its collocation of light and dark. By day, he wandered through the historic districts, visited the charming shops, and engaged with the friendly locals. The vibrant cultural scene, with events and gatherings along the water and at Tryon Palace, provided a sense of community he had longed for. Yet, as night descended, he couldn't ignore the eerie transformation the town underwent. The whispered tales of supernatural forces and unexplained disappearances lingered in the back of his mind, making him question if New Bern was as peaceful as it seemed. Section 3, Chapter 1. The more time Christopher spent in New Bern, the more he felt drawn into its web of intrigue. The picturesque town, with its charming facades and seemingly serene environment, contrasted sharply with the underlying tension he sensed. He began to observe patterns, subtle hints in the behavior of the locals that suggested a collective unease. His training had taught him to pay attention to such details, to read between the lines and discern the hidden stories that others might overlook. This sense of foreboding only deepened his resolve to understand what was really happening in New Bern. Christopher's days were spent immersing himself in the town's history and folklore, seeking clues that might explain the strange occurrences. He visited the local library, pored over old newspapers, and engaged in conversations with anyone willing to talk. His nights, however, were a different story. Sleep continued to elude him, and he found himself wandering the streets, absorbing the town's nocturnal rhythms. The shadows seemed to whisper secrets, and he felt as though he was on the brink of uncovering something significant. Despite the mystery surrounding him, Christopher found solace in his writing. The tranquil environment of New Bern provided a stark contrast to his inner turmoil, allowing him to focus on his work. He began drafting new chapters, blending his research with the strange and captivating elements of the town. The process was cathartic, helping him channel his restless energy into something productive. As he delved deeper into his writing, he couldn't shake the feeling that his arrival in New Bern was no coincidence. The town, with all its secrets and stories, seemed to be calling him to fulfill a purpose he had yet to fully understand. In spite of his desire for a calm and uneventful life, Christopher felt a familiar stirring of purpose. The tranquility he sought seemed intertwined with the town's mysteries, and his instinct to protect and investigate resurfaced. He knew he couldn't ignore the signs, and his skills would be put to the test in ways he hadn't anticipated. The contrast between the town's daylight charm and its nighttime unease intrigued him. He sensed that understanding New Bern's secrets was crucial to finding the peace he longed for. In New Bern, Christopher found himself not only searching for peace, but also drawn into a deeper, more complex web of intrigue. His solitary nature and professional background would be both his shield and his guide as he navigated the shadows of this seemingly idyllic town. The more he observed, the more he realized that his new home was a place where history and mystery intertwined, creating a unique and challenging environment. The eerie atmosphere at night, coupled with the locals' cryptic behavior, suggested that the town's past held secrets that were yet to be revealed. Section 4, Chapter 1, Introduction to Mayor Bradley Buckley. Christopher's journey in New Bern was becoming more than just an escape from his past life. It was evolving into a mission to decipher the town's enigmas and protect its residents from the lurking dangers. His presence in New Bern was beginning to feel like destiny rather than coincidence. The Viking bracelet, the owl pendant, and the town's mysterious aura all seemed to converge, guiding him toward a new purpose. He was no longer just a visitor. He was becoming an integral part of New Bern's unfolding story, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Mayor Bradley Buckley, a man of average height but lanky build, perfectly embodied the quintessential small-town mayor. With his neatly pressed suits and a confident, reassuring smile, he had the polished look of a seasoned public servant, the kind you might expect to see in any quaint town across America. His mannerisms and speeches were practiced, exuding a sense of reliability and dedication to the town's well-being. He attended every town event, shaking hands and listening to constituents with genuine interest, further solidifying his image as a pillar of the community. However, two features set him apart from the typical small-town official. His piercing, bloodshot eyes hinted at sleepless nights, or perhaps a penchant for indulging a bit too much on weeknights. These eyes, while disconcerting to some, added an unexpected layer of intensity to his otherwise composed demeanor. Additionally, a small, oddly shaped scar on his left cheek drew curiosity and speculation among the townspeople. The scar, coupled with his unsettling gaze, suggested a past filled with untold stories and hinted at a complexity beneath his polished exterior. These peculiar traits made Mayor Buckley an enigmatic figure in New Bern, someone who was both respected and quietly questioned by those he served. Section 5, Chapter 1, Introduction to Little Mac. Then there was Sheriff Bill McCarthy, a large-bellied man about 6'2" with a rough, unkempt beard and a gold tooth, who oddly bore the nickname Little Mac. Unlike Mayor Buckley, Little Mac was far less welcoming. Overweight and gruff, he had transitioned from a football coach to Craven County Sheriff after attending a 2-year college. His demeanor was brusque, and he seemed perpetually annoyed, as if the responsibilities of his office were an unwelcome burden. The walls of his office were plastered with missing person posters, a stark contrast to the quaint charm of the town outside. Christopher's initial attempts to engage the sheriff in conversation were met with resistance. Little Mac shrugged off any questions Christopher posed, showing little interest in discussing the troubling disappearances that seemed to haunt New Bern. People come and go, Little Mac grunted dismissively. Some just go sooner than others. His tone was flat, as if the matter was of no real consequence. The sheriff's casual indifference was unsettling, especially given the number of faces staring down from the posters on the walls. Section 6, Chapter 1, Introduction to Earl and Daisy Donovan. Earl and Daisy Donovan owned a small 9-room hotel built in the late 1800s, a charming relic with a perpetually flashing vacancy sign on the front door, despite the fact that rooms were never actually available. The hotel, with its weathered facade and creaking wooden floors, seemed to exist in a time warp, capturing the essence of a bygone era. The flashing vacancy sign was a peculiar paradox that intrigued passers-by and hinted at the establishment's mysterious reputation. The locals knew better than to inquire about room availability, but newcomers often found themselves puzzled by the perpetually empty yet occupied status of the hotel. Earl Donovan, a tall man with white hair and a friendly demeanor, took care of the grounds and handled maintenance duties. He was a familiar sight around the hotel, often seen with a tool belt around his waist or driving his late-model Ford truck that misfired a cylinder with a puff of smoke from the tailpipe once in a while. Earl was always ready with a wave and a friendly hello, chatting amiably with passers-by and hotel guests alike. His easy smile and approachable nature belied the eerie reputation of the hotel, creating a dissonance that left visitors feeling both welcomed and unnerved. His genial presence provided a comforting facade, masking the undercurrents of mystery that swirled around the old hotel. Daisy Donovan, in stark contrast to her husband, was a small woman with salt and pepper hair and a rough exterior. She managed the finances and collected money from the guests, who usually stayed for a few weeks at a time. Daisy's sharp eyes missed nothing, and she had an uncanny ability to silence any complaints with a single, stern look. Her presence was commanding, and she ran the hotel with an iron fist, ensuring that everything operated smoothly. Despite her tough exterior, there was an unspoken understanding between her and Earl, a partnership that had endured the test of time. Their relationship was a study in contrasts, yet it worked seamlessly, their combined efforts maintaining the enigmatic allure of the hotel. Section 7, Chapter 1, Introduction to Neola, a New Bern shop owner. "You don't strike me as the souvenir type," Neola remarked, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. She stood behind the counter, casually picking up a piece of candy from the case and popping it into her mouth. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, seemed to see right through Christopher. "I'm Neola, the owner of this place," she introduced herself, her gaze never wavering. He glanced around the quaint gift shop, taking in the eclectic mix of items on display. "I'm Christopher Thornton," he said, scanning the shelves lined with handmade crafts, local honey, and artisanal soaps. But his attention kept drifting back to the wooden steaks displayed prominently in a glass case near the register. Each steak was intricately carved, with the words Craven blood etched along the side. Neola followed his gaze, her expression turning serious. "These steaks are more than just trinkets," she said, her voice lowering. "They're protection." Christopher raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued. "Protection from what?" "From them," Neola replied, her eyes flickering with intensity. Christopher felt a twinge of skepticism. "Who are they?" he asked, thinking he had just encountered his first New Bern unhinged shop owner like the ones you see in old cult horror movies. "The Nightwalkers," Neola said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The creatures that lurk in the shadows of this town. They might look like ordinary souvenirs, but these steaks are crafted with a purpose. They've saved more lives than you can imagine." Christopher stifled a chuckle, thinking to himself, "This woman is 2 steps from the asylum." Yet, despite his disbelief, there was something about her intensity and the glint in her eyes that made him pause and consider the possibility, however remote, that she might be telling the truth. Neola leaned closer. Section 8, Chapter 2, Breakfast with the Daywalker. Introduction to the Daywalker. The next morning, Christopher Thornton was exhausted from the previous night's unsettling experiences and needed the strongest, blackest coffee he could find. With one of New Bern's main attractions being its bed and breakfasts, there was no shortage of early morning cafes. Christopher descended the stairs of his Main Street Airbnb into the warm sunshine with squinting eyes, crossed the street, and entered a small, bustling coffee shop. It was Friday, and tourists were pouring in for the weekend's events. Christopher ordered his coffee from the barista at the counter and settled at a table by the window. After a few sips of the invigorating brew, he noticed a peculiar figure walking up the street. The man was dressed entirely in black, including a hoodie pulled low over his forehead and dark sunglasses that obscured his eyes. Even though the morning air was slightly cool, the black gloves the man was wearing were unnecessary for the season. His face appeared unnaturally pale, almost ghostly. There were many people walking the streets on this morning, but no one seemed to notice the man. As if that wasn't strange enough, from Christopher's vantage point, the man seemed to be phasing in and out of visibility, like a flickering hologram. It was also very difficult to place an age on the man. It was hard to tell if he was 21 or 41 from any angle. "Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" Christopher muttered to himself. Then he realized he might be seeing Jacob, the man who interrupted his encounter with Mayor Buckley and his crew on the previous night. As Christopher watched the mysterious man, he couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. The way the man moved, almost gliding along the pavement, reminded him of the eerie tales Neola had shared about the Nightwalkers. Could this man be one of them? Or was Christopher's imagination running wild after the previous night's unsettling encounter? The memory of Neola's intense warning about the Nightwalkers lingered in his mind. He recalled the look of earnest urgency in Neola's eyes as she described the supernatural forces that plagued New Bern. Christopher had initially dismissed her words as the ramblings of a superstitious local, but now, as he watched the man in black and recalled the last night's encounter, he couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to her warnings. Christopher's thoughts were interrupted when the man in black paused directly across the street from the coffee shop. He turned his head slowly, as if sensing Christopher's gaze, and their eyes met through the window. Despite the dark sunglasses, Christopher felt a chill run down his spine, as if the man was peering directly into his soul. Feeling a sudden surge of energy, Christopher quickly scanned the rest of the viewable area to see if there were others like this man around. He glanced around the cafe, took a long sip of his coffee, noting the obliviousness of the other patrons to the strange figure outside. When he dared to look back, the man in black had vanished, leaving Christopher to question whether he had truly seen him at all, or if his exhausted mind was conjuring up specters from the shadows. Without wasting another moment, Christopher sprang to his feet and dashed out of the coffee shop, leaving a few bucks on the table, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and determination. The bustling street outside was filled with tourists and locals going about their morning routines, but Christopher's focus was solely on the mysterious figure. He pushed through the crowd, his eyes locked on the man dressed in black. As he began to run, the figure seemed to glide effortlessly, moving with an almost supernatural ease. Christopher called out, "Hey, hey!" hoping to draw the man's attention, or perhaps get a better look at his face, but his voice was lost in the din of the busy street. Despite Christopher's best efforts, the distance between them only seemed to grow. Thank you for listening. For updates and announcements about the book, please click the link in the description and provide your best email address. If you would like to support the project and receive additional sample installments, your donation would be greatly appreciated. Creating a successful novel often takes a community, and your support means a lot to me, especially as this is my first attempt at writing a novel. If you do decide to make a donation, please be sure to use your best email address so there is no delays or mix-ups. For more authors' works and other content by Michaelson Williams, visit michaelsoneffect.gumroad.com. Author Michaelson Williams. All rights reserved. Michaelson Williams. The Michaelson Effect. Copyright 2024.